you talk about the ultimate censorship and the irony of things. Yeah. Wow.
And let me explain one step further, Doug, because I don't want people to think that this is just sour grapes. I don't care. I'm not writing for the money. I'm writing to tell people information, because this goes all the way back to my degree in journalism. I committed to be a journalist, and I was taught back in the days of the old republic that I was supposed to be finding out the truth as best I could and then presenting that to the public. And fool that I was, I really thought that's what I was supposed to be doing, and I still do. So that's what I'm trying to do, is simply, I'm not trying to sell books. I'm trying to get information out to people. Unfortunately, most of the major media today, certainly the major broadcast media, and most of the major newspapers, they have all fallen under the control of a literal handful, about 5 corporations with interlocking ownerships and directorships. So we have a small clique of people who now control everything we see and hear, okay, with the only exception now of social media, which is that, and they're trying to curtail that, and some of the alternative broadcast media, such as Hagmann and others I could name. But if you don't tune in and listen to these specific places, if you just watch TV, you are getting the corporate party line with all the twist spins and misinformation and disinformation. It's really incredible. And also in that same book, Zombie Nation, I had a whole section. And I'm mentioning this because I think this will prove to any thinking person that this is nothing but sheer censorship. My editor says, I think you need to leave this section out. And I said, well, I don't think so. I think it's very important, and I think people need to know about this. And he said, well, let me put it this way. If you don't take this out, I'm going to cancel the book. So in other words, you do it our way or it doesn't get published. Well, of course, that leaves me in a position of, well, I either have to agree to take it out or none of it gets out. So I caved and I said, okay, we'll take it out. And what was the section that they wanted me to take out? The section about how the corporations censor the news. And I couldn't help but laugh. I told him, I said, well, you've kind of proved my point, haven't you?
Is
that incredible?
It is. And ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Jim Marrs. Jim Marrs, that's jimmars.com. Jim, when you told me that, it really kind of smacked me upside the head thinking about that, the irony. And of course, yes, I mean, the censorship, the different methods that they tweak and they censor us. Oh, but right. Man, yeah. Well,
look at a very, very recent example that I think of is that when the national media shows the Donald Trump talks at the Republican National Convention, they mostly zoomed in on him. You get to see him, and there's a bunch of people behind him, but it's just him, and there's people behind him. They rarely showed you the overall picture. Okay. Then same thing on the Democratic National Convention. When Hillary's up speaking, they kind of zoom in on her, and then they'll pan out maybe just a little bit, and it looks like she's right there before a huge crowd. In fact, but then when you actually see the actual photographs, you'll find that in Donald Trump, if you could see the total picture of the auditorium, the arena where he is, it's packed. It's shoulder to shoulder. There are thousands of people there. On Hillary, and I have seen the photographs, if you back off, there's a lot of empty seats. And in fact, and I checked on this, it's absolutely true. There was an advertisement on Craigslist. They actually advertised and paid people $50 to come and fill seats at the Democratic National Convention, because after the pro-Bernie Sanders people walked out, that place was probably about half empty. There was no massive support for Hillary Clinton. And yet you wouldn't know that by watching the news because they just zoom in on the candidates and flash around and show you pictures of where there are some filled seats, and you think there's a massive crowd there when there's not.
Amazing. Yeah, I saw that. I saw the report of that about the Craigslist, and I really, at first, I thought it was a spoof. I thought, this can't be true.
I did too.
Man.
Yeah.
And to think of it, yes. And of course,
until I saw, and I think it was my friend Alex Jones, one of his reporters actually grabbed one of these guys and did an interview with him. And I saw the interview, and he's kind of shuffling his feet, and he was a clean cut young white guy with a dark suit and a tie, and he says, I was paid $50 to come sit here in the seat.
Yeah, exactly. And Jim, I was on with Alex Jones this past Tuesday, and I asked him about that just to make sure. I think it was Joe Biggs that was there at the convention. I can't remember, but yeah, he said, oh yeah, that was true. So it's an amazing.
See, now as a newsman of almost 50 years, half a century I've been in the news business, okay? To me, that's news.
Yes.
That should have been news that the Democratic National Party are having to pay people to come fill the seats, okay? That should have been a news story.
Amen.
But you never saw that anywhere except Alex Jones, and now we're mentioning it.
Yeah, exactly. And folks, I mean, pay attention because what Jim Mars is talking about here is so important because we're being gamed. This whole thing is a massaging of our perception, and perception is reality, as you well know, right? I mean, this is how
right.
Everything's being gamed. Well, Jim, you have I took out all of your books from my bookcase, and I put them on our conference table today, and I was going kind of through each one of them. You've woven a tapestry, just a marvelous, exquisite tapestry. If you did not write another word, the tapestry that you've written or that you've created through your writings takes us from the most, I don't know, the deepest of the earliest of times to the current events. I mean, and
takes us from the ridiculous to the sublime.
Well, that too.
All right.
Yep.
Here's this is interesting. Think about this, Doug. Not too long back, I was on somebody's talk show, and actually this was early on, because now I have about 8 or 10 books, but they were talking about my trilogy, and I thought, what are they talking about? I hadn't written a trilogy. But when I went back and really got to thinking about it, there is some truth there. The first book that I wrote that immediately hit the New York Times bestseller list was Crossfire, The Plot to Kill Kennedy.
Yes.
And that came out in the late 80s, okay? And that was simply a book about all the information I'd gathered on the Kennedy assassination. And I had all this because I was here. I have a photograph of me as a young, wild college kid dancing on the stage of Jack Ruby's Carousel Club that was taken about a month before the Kennedy assassination. So I was here. I was here the whole time. I lived through it.
Where were you? Where were you at 12:30 on November 22nd? You were down. Okay.
Well, I hate to admit it. I was in bed asleep. Okay. But to give you some idea, to show you that my book about Kennedy was not out of some fad or some love of Kennedy. I was in college. I was on a degree for journalism. I had to have a lot of English, of course, and I'd had an English exam that morning, that Friday morning. And as was kind of my wont, I had kind of all night cramming, okay, for this test. And I took the test, got back to my apartment about 11 o'clock or maybe a little after in the morning. And needless to say, I was dead tired. So I went in and flopped on my bed, and I was asleep at 12:30 when the assassination happened. My roommate ran in and said, "Wake up." Said, "They shot Kennedy." And I was half asleep. And also, again, keep in mind, I was redneck Texan. had grown up in the Baptist church. From the pulpit, I'd been told that if Kennedy gets elected, the Pope will run the country, and that he was soft on communism. And although I thought he was a good-looking guy, had a beautiful wife, and I thought it was kind of cool that we would have a president with some little kids crawling around in the Oval Office, I was not a Kennedy supporter. So my roommate said, no, seriously, something's happened. So I went, what? Okay, now I'm awake. Now I'm a journalism major. Now I know that I better start paying attention. So we ran in, turned on this little funky television set we had, and black and white, of course. And I remember we were watching TV for maybe 15, 20 minutes before Walter Cronkite finally came on and wiping tears from his eyes and said, it's now official, the president is dead. Well, they made that announcement right around 1 o'clock that afternoon, which means I was onto this story within 10 minutes of it happening, okay?
Jeez.
And like I said, I'd already been in Dallas. I knew who ran Dallas. I knew the conservative streak of Dallas. And I knew that H.L. Hunt had posted those wanted posters for
Jim,
Kennedy.
Jim, hold on to that thought. We're up against the break. This is fascinating, though. Folks, you're listening to Jim Marrs. What a treat. What a treat to have Jim Marrs. I want to give a shout-out to John Robertson for assisting in setting this interview up. God bless John. But Jim Marrs, author of Our Occulted History and many other books. Folks, visit jimmars.com. Truly a great truth teller and a patriot, and now obviously a friend of this program. Wow, jimmars.com. We're right back. Stay right where you're at, folks.
Look at your city, town, or its people the same way ever again. Stained by Blood, a murder investigation based upon a true story by private investigator Douglas J. Hagmann. Using the character Mark Stiles, Hagmann takes you on a journey behind the scenes where the homicide becomes secondary to an underworld of satanic ritual abuse, child abduction, and even mind-controlled experimentation. A world dismissed as conspiracy by those who want to keep its secrets hidden, exposing the dangers, denials, and deceptions. For 5 years, a brutal killer remained on the loose, free to kill again. As Mark struggles to navigate the maze of bizarre twists and untangle a web of deeply hidden secrets kept by some of the most powerful and influential people in his community and beyond. Stained by Blood. Order your copy of this engaging novel today at HagmannandHagmann.com and click on the link. Stained by Blood.
Reporting on what the mainstream media won't, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on the Global Star Radio Network.